What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now, Back to the Past. I'm Alex, and in this video, we're going all the way back to maybe like a month ago to Dragon Age the Veilguard. I finally beat this game, and I thought, you know what? Because it's been far enough from the launch, and it probably doesn't make as much sense on Podcast Now, it's not relevant enough. It's old history at this point. I thought, hey, let's do it for Back to the Past. And, you know, it actually does make sense to be here. You know, I did a whole video. We talked about Dragon Age Origins. We did a whole video on Dragon Age 2. I want to get to Inquisition at some point in my life, but I thought, you know what? I put in about 54 hours in the Veilguard. I wasn't really wanting to do like another 80 plus in Inquisition right after, so I'm going to hold off on that for a little while. You can, I'm sorry if you were looking forward to that, but I want to talk about Veilguard, and my opinion on this game is actually quite all over the place because the game's all over the place, and the game really took me through a spiritual and emotional journey that I gotta be real, I can't say a lot of games have actually made me feel the way that the Veilguard has. Now that's not, and I will say, that's not a good thing, okay? Let's break the wall, and let's be honest for a second. This game, for a lot of it, I think is one of the most okay games I've ever played in my life. Okay, I really believe it. And I'm going to go in depth, and I want to talk about kind of each aspect of this game. But kind of jumping to the end, the last 4 or 5 hours, okay, if you just play, because, you know, I kind of front-loaded myself. I did everything. Everything, I guess, in terms of I got the best ending you could get. I got pretty much every faction support. I had them mainly maxed out. I did all the companion quests, and I got them maxed out. So I was going into that final wave of quests with the best case scenario, right? Because if you don't have the best case scenario, if you don't have some of the factions on your side, if you don't have your companions like all the way geared up, you're going to lose. You're going to lose them, okay? So I mean, that's kind of how Dragon Age games are. That's kind of how Mass Effect games are, right? Like, you do the work, whether you like it or not. You do the work, and then, like, you're going to get rewarded with a better outcome because you have people around you. You know, it was the same thing, really. You think about Mass Effect, right? Mass Effect 2, in terms of kind of saving everybody. Mass Effect 3 was about building an army, and if you didn't do that, you know, you were going to have some big trouble, you know, towards the very end of the game. And this is very much like that as well. But I will say, those last, like, part 11 or chapter 11, whatever it is, till the end was actually really good. It in the moment, like initially as it started to get good, I was thinking, okay, like this is they're trying to play around with me, right? Because it's like, okay, I've experienced a game that I'm really just not connecting with, and this is just like it's just a flash in the pan, right? Like, it's not going to last that long. Actually, it did last the entire time, right? From like part 11 or chapter 11 for the last like 3-4 hours, because I just kind of played it straight through. The game's actually quite good. I will say it actually comes together. It has emotion. Like, I realized upon losing one of my characters that, okay, I don't think they're the greatest character in the world, and I wouldn't put them up against other great characters even this year, but, like, you know, that hurts. That actually did hurt to lose that character, and some of the twists that they did I actually think was quite, I give them props, I guess, for trying it. I don't know if I actually like it, but at least they tried something kind of big, so I'll give them respect there. But yeah, I mean, the last little bit of this game, to me, actually was good. Now, was it worth, because that was like hours 48, 49, 50, 51, 52, right? Somewhere in that range, or maybe like 49 plus were like good. But up until that point was, I would say, average at best, and then very much below average at worst. So, okay, let's break this game down a little bit. Now, I already did a couple different impressions videos, you know, on podcasts now, so I'm going to kind of skim over some stuff. But I will say this, my thoughts kind of evolved as I played the game, because, you know, some things that I thought were fine for a while took a nasty turn at points, and I was like, okay, I've had enough. And honestly, the writing is actually one of those things. So, you know, when I did those impressions videos on podcasts now, you know, 10 hours and 15, 20 hours, you know, the game is chugging along, and there's really nothing special about this game. And to be honest with you, there's maybe nothing special about the entirety of the game. But, you know, you're going along, and it's like, okay, but is anything like massively terrible? And for a while, I think the answer is no. I think the gameplay is above average in terms of like the actual fighting, and everything else is just fine. You know, sometimes it's bad, sometimes it's pretty okay, but like, you know, it averages out in just like, this is fine. This is a 5 out of 10 if 5 is like an average thing, right? But I will say, as the game kept going and going and going, I really do think the writing, for the most part, is really bad. I don't know why. I struggle to actually pinpoint it, but I was not having it for the writing, for the majority. I mean, and again, now here's the thing. I did so much. It's not like I'm skimming this. And again, there's pockets, there's times where the thing's okay. There's characters where at times the thing is okay. Some kind of arcs that characters go over. But other times, and in fact, the majority of times, here's the deal. It's just boring. This game, to me, is just non-eventful. The writing does not catch you. The writing is not interesting. And oftentimes it just is bland. It's just things that do not interest me. And I actually think, okay, so 50 whatever hours, right? When I was like deep in it, really deep, and like I was so far from the beginning, but like I wasn't at the end, right? I was kind of in the middle of this just like long trek, right? The thing that kept me going was actually the severely repetitive just gameplay loop that was going on. And that, because I was like listening to podcasts at a certain point. I was like, the thing, I mean, again, I'll just say it again. The thing that got me is just the hook of do a quest, take out this group, go fetch something, which also results in taking out a group, find something, bring it back. They're very simple, by the books. You've done it 1,000 times in other RPGs. Quests. You go out and do it, and then you bring it back, and you level up. And that was actually the thing that kept me going for the longest. And I'll tell you, it was actually because I could sense where the combat was going. One thing I will say, I've said this before about this game, but now having played, and, I got to level like 53 or something, maybe 54. I almost matched my hours, which is kind of funny. But, I've played Mage leading all the way up. So when I did the videos on Origins, when I did the video on 2, I was playing as Mage, okay? And so I know what the Mage can do, in those games at least, as they get more powerful. And I think I probably played Mage in Inquisition, but it's been a long time. Like the meteor shower is coming. That the ice glacier is like a more advanced move, right? So like the for at least Mage, right? The beginning attacks is kind of like single attacks just directed at them. Then it becomes like an area. Then it becomes kind of an area, but like severe damage, right? Those are kind of like tier 1, 2, 3. So as I'm going through it, you could like look ahead a little bit in the skill tree, and it's like, oh, that's actually there. And again, the combat I do believe in this game is actually the best. Now, some enemies are very spongy. I think I had a problem as the game kept going on with just the repetition even of the enemies. Once you fight one dragon, and I fought like 5. And I mean, I guess maybe, no, actually more. I fought maybe 4 of them side mission wise. And I tried to do, again, like as much as I possibly could. I fought that level 50, like the main dragon, the main side mission dragon. I did that. You fight the dragons in the main thing. Once you fight one, you fought them all. Because they have the exact same move pattern. They do the exact same thing. They're always going to fly up. They're always going to shoot at you. They're always going to stomp down. They're always going to kick you with their back, like right leg or whatever. They're always going to do the exact same thing. And it's like that for this entire... So again, I mean, even at the game's strength, which I do believe is kind of the fluidity of the combat, it still becomes highly repetitive, and God save you if you're not high enough level, because that sponginess and the amount of hits it's going to take out an enemy, if you are not ahead of the curve, again, God bless you, because you are going to have so much trouble. And now again, I mean, that's the pro with doing everything. I was always ahead of the curve. The final couple missions, every enemy is level 45. I was level like 49, 50, 51 as I'm fighting them, right? As I'm leveling up in that last stretch, I started at least 4 or 5 levels above them, and I was having a tough time. They are still spongy. Those dragons, I mean, I fought the level 50 dragon, I think, when I was 48, so I was a little bit below. But even I fought a 35 dragon when I was, I think, 46, and it still took a bit. So it's like, the fighting in this game is on one hand, depending on how you almost view it, it's fun. It's good. It's actually, I think, quite fun, but you almost have to just like turn your brain off, keep spamming the same stuff, keep your dodging. I mean, look, I don't want to harp on it too much because a lot of games, like, combat's combat, right? And eventually, for a lot of games, the combat is going to get repetitive. You are generally going to be doing the same thing more than once. The enemies are going to repeat. Their patterns are going to repeat. So I don't want to get too deep in, even though I kind of already have. I don't want to really go too much further, other than, again, to kind of summarize as the game just got to a point where I was there, but I wasn't. I was reading what was happening. I was paying attention to a degree. I was going around fighting enemies, leveling up, equipping stuff, all that jazz. But I wasn't really there. I was listening to podcasts. My focus was not really there because the game did not give me a reason for 48 and a half hours, 49 hours to be there. I really believe that. And again, I think a lot of that comes down to the writing. I would say for the most part, most of these characters are also uninteresting. Like Nev was the love interest for me. And I mean, I liked the romance kind of scenes that they did generally, but I don't even her, like I think she's actually kind of bland. I don't really think she's the greatest character. She was just kind of my favorite initially because I was like, okay, I'm going to lock this in, right? Do I do her? Do I do Ballara? Do I do Harding? Like which one I'm going to do? And I kind of just locked her in very early. Probably didn't even have to do it as early as I did, and I didn't stop. It's like, well, I don't really know if I'm interested in any of these people. I don't think any of them are all that interesting. I mean, maybe there's like one or two. Emmerich, I do think is actually pretty cool, especially what you can do with him story-wise. The thing is, even that is a little bit repetitive in terms of like the companion quests. Like each of them have moments where you go up to them. They have a quest. You go to the quest, you just talk to them. It takes like 2 minutes, and that's the quest. It's over. You go back and you do maybe like 7, 8, 9 quests for these people, and I would say maybe one is like actually impactful, and it's the final one. For all of these characters, they kind of go back and forth between very minor like movement. Maybe you'll fight if you're lucky, but generally it's like moving and talking. That's one quest type for companions. The other quest type for companions is literally going to the location and just talking to them, and then that's the quest. That's the entirety of the quest. Then for the final quest, they will all have a pretty big quest line where things kind of come to a head. You'll go through a couple different things, you'll fight a boss, and that's where it gets a little bit more interesting. That's where it gets a little bit more fun and more just in detail or in depth. Like that I guess they were saving it all for those moments. You do that, and then you complete their quest, right? And then and then actually, let me take that back. That's the second to last mission. Then the final mission for all these characters is going back to them one more time, talking to them. They tell you to meet them somewhere. You go there, you talk to them again for 30 seconds, and you complete the quest, and you complete their character arc, right? And you get the trophy, you get them maxed out, you kind of guarantee that they're going to live at the end, and you're golden, right? And it just, again, things are happening. There's words on the screen, but I'm not invested. And again, as I mentioned in those Podcast Now videos towards the beginning, I didn't really sense it the first 10, 15, 20 hours. But the more I went in, it's like, okay, because I remember saying, like, is there anything in this game that's bad? And my answer was no. I'm correcting that. I do think the writing in this game is generally bad on average. On average, the writing in this game is bad. The looks was something that I thought was going to be like the most major turnoff that it could possibly be for me. I kind of embraced the looks. Now, the Darkspawns still look ridiculous. I think they still look stupid. Not a fan of the looks whatsoever, specifically of them, okay? It's just, that's where you remember, like, the dark fantasy. That's where you remember what they look like in Origins, or even 2. I making the Dragon Age 2 video that I did a few weeks back, like, they look cool. They're really cool characters, or enemy types or whatever, and they're not anymore. So even something like that, or I guess that was something leading into this game where I was like, okay, just being this fantasy type world, they're clearly like leaning into it, but like, is that going to work? I do think it works for the most part. I think it's only when they really want to get like majorly, is that a word? Like get dark in a major way. That's when I think it actually falters, because it's like, it's not, when the game is trying to be kind of like a spectacle, right? And it's kind of like embracing that fantasy type where, like, I don't know, it's very colorful, it's leaning into those kind of stereotypes. I think it actually works. And there was the thing that many people actually talked about with this game that I'll echo as well. Probably the best part of this game, objectively, not even subjectively, objectively, is the performance. Like, the game runs well, the game, like, everything's good, right? It looks pretty good most of the time, sounds pretty good, runs well, no stuttering, no frame, no clipping, no nothing. I mean, the game actually, in terms of optimization, they did a very, very good job there. And maybe, because subjectively, maybe you like the story more than I like it. Maybe I like the gameplay more than you like it. I do think many people, like without even having opinions matter, I think the game actually runs extremely well. I think that's something you can very easily say. Now, I think I want to go into spoilers just because I do want to talk about like the last couple hours of this game. So, I've had 2 impression videos on podcasts now. I talked about it a bit here. The game, up until where it starts to get good, is not good. I mean, maybe that's a stupid way of saying it, so that's on me. But, the game does, I think, turn a corner, gets interesting. They pull a couple twists on you. You actually have consequences to your action, and they save it all for the last 4 missions. Before that, I think this game is not worth it whatsoever. When it gets to that point, I say, okay, now it's a question of, do you want to go through 48 hours of the game being fine at best to then get to 4 hours of it being actually pretty darn good, right? Like, what is your bar that you would like to clear? How much is that worth to you, right? Hey, it's a 50-hour game. People like 50-hour games, but is it a good 50-hour game? That's up to you to decide. So that's just one thing. Let me get into, I want to get into spoilers because we got to talk about that ending. Okay, 3, 2, 1. So the thing I said in the very beginning, in terms of giving them kind of props for trying, but I don't know how I feel, is Varric. There was something about it. And when we talk about like the visual style, there was always something to how Varric looked. Even at any point when you were talking to him, he had this glow to him. And I don't know if I was crazy like thinking that, but I sensed it like the whole time. Now, I didn't know. It did catch me. Okay, it really did. There was one point, and it was, you constantly in this game gather up your team right at that table, and you say, okay, here's the situation. The game constantly is telling you to fix their problems, right? In fact, Varric tells you multiple times, hey, you're really going to want to focus on their issues, because if they're not focused, then you're going to have a really big problem at the end. There's a one point before you do the assault and before really those last like 3-4 missions begin, right? They're all standing there, and Varric is standing behind, and he looks like a ghost. And I feel like your character, there's something said where I feel like it was off. Like, I don't remember the wording. In fact, I don't even freaking remember at this point what was said. But I thought, why? And I think maybe it was Varric that said. And I was thinking, why is he saying that when he's here right now? And then you think about it and you say, okay, well, like, then you do the assault and he's not there. Like, he's not participating. And you're wondering, okay, is he that injured from like the knife strike? Like, what's going on? And then, again, spoilers, so this is not a surprise. Like, so he died in the very beginning. Solus took him out. Everybody knew he died except for you. Solus made you think, or, kind of like had him appear to you. And, he was doing it in a sense to kind of help you out. And Solus's arc, I think maybe we have to talk about for a few minutes as well. But I give them, again, props because that was actually something very, very big. And I think there were enough hints throughout the whole thing that you probably could have seen it coming. I saw it coming a little bit, but I didn't put it all together until really they showed it to me, until you started to relive the beginning of the game. And he's like, this isn't right. Or, Varric is alive and all that stuff. And it's like, no, he's been dead the whole time. I had Harding that died. So, she was kind of around in that memorial ghost kind of service thing that was going on. And that did get me, but then it kind of made me mad, right? Because it's, at least maybe me, because it's like, okay, you killed one of the most popular Dragon Age characters, a character that's very good, and you kind of just paraded him around in this game as a Force ghost that we thought was real for a majority of the time, to only find out, no, he's been gone all along. So not only did you play with us through the whole game, but you killed him. He's gone now from the universe, right? So going forward, he's not there. It's not a make or break thing. So I don't want to spend, again, even too much time talking about it, other than to say, I do give them respect for trying something that big. I can tell, Jen, I'm looking right at you, eye to eye here. I really don't know if it worked for me. I can't say it didn't work because it did get me, but I can't say like I'm pleased with the result, right? So it's kind of like this weird in the middle thing where I truly can tell you, just person to person here, I don't really know how I feel about it. The Solus thing and just how the game kind of ends, I mean, like, it ends in a massive battle, right? Like, that's what I can very much respect about this ending, is it does feel Mass Effect, like that Mass Effect 2 moment. I think Mass Effect 2 is a massively better game. Anybody that says this is even close, I don't know. I think Mass Effect 2, even Mass Effect 3, I think are far, far superior games than Dragon Age the Veilguard, and even the ending, even everything building up. Because, again, for those games, it was this coming together of all of these characters that you love so much that they actually did, in my opinion, a very good job of building up. And it felt like it had stakes because you felt connected to these different species, to these different races, to these different characters. They earned it. I think the best way of boiling it down, in my opinion, like how I would describe it to people, Dragon Age the Veilguard did very similar things in the last 3-4 hours that Mass Effect 2 and even 3 did. 3 did on like a larger scale kind of because of the war, right? The difference is, in my own personal opinion, Dragon Age was unearned. It was not earned whatsoever. I guess I would say, like, when Harding died, I did feel something. She was really kind of towards the bottom of my care list in terms of all, like, if you ranked, well, there's like 7-8 companions, she would be in like the bottom, easily the bottom half. But at the same time, she died, and it's like, yeah, I would have liked to keep her alive. But I'll say this, in terms of just how my brain functions, I prefer to kind of save everybody. My general way of playing is to be nice, even though this game does a great job of making sure you can't be mean whatsoever. And then number 2, if anybody can die, my general goal in a game is to keep everybody alive. So I don't know if that's actually a testament to, oh, the game made me feel for Harding specifically, versus, okay, well, the way I am wired is that I don't want anybody to die and you kill the character, so that hurts me in a certain way. Does that make sense? So even that, I would say, was it really earned? Was any of it really earned? Again, though, in terms of like the things happening on screen, the actual just things that are playing out, things that are processing in my head, there are things happening, and they are cooler than anything that happened in the rest of the game, right? It is higher stakes. It is battles. It is highly cinematic. You're seeing all these different groups and different kind of leaders of the groups that you've been helping throughout the whole game. They come in. They're helping each other. They're taking out Darkspawn, all that stuff, right? They're doing it's cool scenes. And then they put you in and you fight your couple battles. You get to a big moment. You choose your team. You choose who's going to do this. You choose who's going to do that. You have your final goodbyes with people. That very much, by the way, felt like Mass Effect 3, when you're kind of in that room after you can say goodbye to like the dead, and then you can talk to Morrigan. You get the essence. You're going basically for like that final showdown, right? That moment, very much Mass Effect 3. So, I mean, again, it reminds me of really great moments in Mass Effect 2 and 3, but without, but it had so much fluff. It had a lot of things leading into it that just didn't matter to me. So, yeah, cool things are happening on screen, but they didn't truly impact me. Like, I did care what happened to Solus, but again, like, even that, I don't know, the game goes to such lengths to tell you that he's going to betray you, right? This is a guy who betrays you. This is a guy that betrays everybody. And then what does he do? He betrays you like 3 different times, right? He fools you and all that stuff. And I mean, like, and again, I got the best ending where, he willingly does it, and he, with the fade and all that stuff. And it's like, okay, he redeems himself a little bit, right? And I don't hate the character, like the actual character and like the moral of the character. They do an okay job of like explaining where he came from, right? I think the one where you have to collect the statues, the 5 different statues, and you learn about his background, you learn about his time, with these people, and what he did, and all that, the betrayal, and just everything. But at the same time, they're hounding you with that he's not a good person, and then they're showing, okay, well, he's gone through a lot, but he's also a bad person, and he's also going to still betray you. And then again, like, he does it over and over and over again. So I don't know. A lot of that stuff is not shocking. You see it coming because okay, well, the game keeps telling me he's not good, and then well, all of a sudden he's not good, right? There is an okay resolution there, as I said, but it is what it is. There are multiple like score points, right? Like if the whole game is a 5, or leading into the last 4 hours is like a 3, 4, 5 out of 10, then the last couple hours is like an 8, 9, 10 out of 10, right? Like it's massively, and like the contrast is gigantic, right? But as an average, like where the game stands, I don't know. I mean, I mentioned it earlier before we got into the spoiler thing, like, I don't know if it's worth it. That's why I like to try to just give you guys my thoughts. I try to give it to you honestly, and then you decide. I think for a majority of this game, it's not worth it. And I mean, not worth what? I don't really think it's worth a lot of time being invested in it. And also the pricing obviously has a big part to play. I mean, yeah, it is 50, 55, even more. I mean, like, I didn't do everything. I did as many quests as I could, took out as many dragons, did the companions, all that stuff. And when it comes to puzzles and all that jazz, like, the puzzles aren't that deep, but at the same time, there are a lot of them, and there's a lot of stuff to collect. And I could have been in this game easily 10, 20, 30 more hours, right? So it is a meaty game, but then is it worth the meatiness, right? Is it worth $70? Is it worth $40? I think this game on sale would be pretty okay. But as a full price thing, I don't know. there was a point, as I said earlier, right, like the middle of this game when I was so far in, but I couldn't see I was in the tunnel, and you look back and you can't see where you came from and you can't see the ending, right? And I was just in this loop of just, I don't care. I was party chatting with people at the time, like, different stages of this game. And I remember, like, saying, like, I'm just not enjoying it. I'm going through the motions. That's all it was. For so many hours, for maybe 25 hours in this game, easily, in the middle, 25, I was just going through the motions. The things were happening. I was fighting. I was talking. I was choosing things. I was leveling up. I was doing skills. I was trying to find like the best builds for characters. I was playing the game, but I really was not connected in any significant way. And that was at least half the game once I kind of like settled in. And that is the perfect thing to me where it's like, okay, that's quality versus quantity, right? 50 hours, but how many hours of this game was actually impactful to me? Very few. I mean, maybe 5. Maybe 5 of 50 was impactful, and it could have been more impactful if the other 45 actually felt impactful. Then the whole thing would, you know what I mean? That's how I feel about this game. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, in terms of like you'll see, because I always do like the video at the end of the year on Podcast Now where I rank all my games. This will be here, and we'll see where it lands on the list. It's not going to be high, I'll tell you that. But you let me know what you think in the comments. Make sure, as always, you're subscribed to the channel, bell icon turned on, and I hope to see you all on the next one.